Hi, I'm Ed Jonawak, and I am a heating and air conditioning guy. I've been reading Facebook for a short period at a time, and to be honest with you, I can't stand it. But I started looking at it because I have a kid that was participating in a college program, and well, basically that's where I'm at. So uh, I did find some stuff where people aren't complete knuckleheads, and I'm going to call that uh, the HVAC boards. And some of them are awful, and some of them are pretty good. This one seems to be pretty good. So I'm actually going to learn how to use my computer to turn a PowerPoint presentation into a movie. This is my first shot. I'm not going to go back and edit it. And if you guys want me to do some more stuff, I will. It seemed like people were interested in it last night. So this is me. I actually did this for a Train the Trainer event in Vegas a couple months ago. So here goes. First try. So who am I? Right? My name's Ed, and I work for a nonprofit in New Jersey. Then we educate contractors, right? It's a nonprofit. I've been doing this a long time. I'm a licensed contractor. I'm a licensed CEU provider. I specialize in system design, performance, and code compliance. Um, I currently instruct adults in the HVAC industry, and I fix shit or fix stuff currently too. I try not to though. I'd rather talk about this stuff than actually do it. So I'm also a dad. There's my kid. You're supposed to go, ah, and there's my kid, right? She can measure airflow, unlike a bunch of the knuckleheads that are currently out in the field. And she's an adult now, I guess. She was currently in that photo employed by the Walt Disney World Company, and I enjoy going there also. Like it says, I'm a dad. I got to do the take your kid to work day at a thing that one of our local supply houses did called a Mana Academy. They rented a couple of rooms at the college that my daughter attends, and she got to take my class, which was pretty cool. I also love acronyms, right? MSU is one of those acronyms. What's MSU stand for, right? Well, it's Montclair State University. That's where my kid attends. And you can see over here to the right, that's the skyline of Manhattan, and it's a pretty cool school. Uh, Come on. Learning how to use this. I'm used to just clicking the button and advancing screens, but I have to sit on the arrow. Next, or what else does MSU stand for? Well, in our industry, it stands for make shit up because for the most part, when it comes to actual design, that's what people are doing. They're not actually using math. They're simply making shit up. So today's goal is to discuss some ROTs, or if you don't know what an ROT is, it's going to be a rule of thumb. And our goal is to smash a bunch of these rules of thumb. All right, so what do we got here? We have beer can cold, right? People have been laughing about that for a long time. Beer can cold. Is it good or bad? Well, obviously, it's not good. Or maybe it could be good, right? If you're drinking beer, well, then cold beer is good. But if we're using it in lieu of something like superheat or subcooling, well, then it's freaking stupid. But yet, there are a lot of people that will look at things when it comes to all facets of HVAC service and design, and they'll scoff at beer can cold while at the same time holding on tightly to a couple of real juicy rules of thumb or, beer can cold. So beer can cold, or BCC as we like to say it, not a good thing. And for the instructors that were in my training session, I have a bunch of slides. This is an example how I teach superheat, right? What are you looking at? You're looking at a moving target, and a moving target would be looking at your target superheat for a non-TXV system. And then I have a whole bunch of stuff buried in there. If anybody's an instructor and you're interested in this stuff, I share. I'll give you access to my drops. That almost sounds weird. Having some patience. Here's an example of why we need patience. Right after 2 minutes, we see the charge on the left looks no good, but after it ran for 20 minutes, it looks like the same system looked good. I don't have patience for the most part, especially with people that, you know, don't actually want to do math, right? I've moved into the realm of this wireless stuff, and I'm going to assume you guys are familiar with the Measure Quick and all. Why you wouldn't want to do that is beyond me. I like the Testo app, but the Measure Quick is just way above and beyond. My background, again, was doing performance measurements on equipment 20, 25 years ago. And the only real tools I had were regular thermocouple type thermometer leads with cotton wicks dunked in water. And the closest thing I had to a computer was a solar powered calculator and a mini mag light held in my mouth so I could power up the calculator while I was down in the basement. Capacity, right? When we're talking about heating BTUs, it's all sensible, so it's pretty easy. Cooling is not so easy because all the BTUs are not created equal. We have sensible BTUs, which drop the temperature. We have latent BTUs, which pull moisture out of the air. And this is where the confusion sets in. Most contractors, when you talk about cooling capacity, talk about it in tons, right? If all you're talking about is tons, you're dealing in beer can cold, right? Because we need to understand what SHR is, right? Do you know what SHR is before I go through this brief explanation? Well, it's sensible heat ratio, and it's important because as an industry, we really don't seem to understand it. Well, some people are going to call that fake news, and I'm going to say it's not because it's true. The majority of the people that I come across, when they start asking questions about what does my lesson plan for that day entail or what are we going to talk about, and they'll almost act as if they don't need to know this stuff. And I simply ask them, do you know what sensible heat ratio is? And can you explain it to me in 2 minutes? And if they can, well, they represent 10 or 15% of our industry. And if they can't, they represent 85% of our industry because people don't understand sensible heat ratio. One of the examples I use quite frequently is if you do a load calc and it comes out at 1.8 tons, what size unit would you use? And the most common answer is would be 2 tons. And if I remember correctly, I'm going to explain to you in a couple minutes why that's no bueno. Sensible heat ratio explained. Well, that's an air conditioner. I'm going to use it to explain sensible heat ratio. I suck at math, so I'm not going to use tons. I'm going to use 10,000 BTUs. If that system right there is operating at a sensible heat ratio of 0.75, and I've chosen 0.75 simply for the reason that most 13, 14, 15 SEER systems run at that magical 400 CFM per ton, which is also bullshit if you didn't know it, will produce a sensible heat ratio of approximately 0.75. It might be a point higher, point lower, but at the end of the day, most systems running that nominal 400 CFM per ton will move or produce a sensible heat ratio of about 0.75. So the way that breaks down is we would have a system, if it's 10K at a 0.75 sensible heat ratio, you'd have 7,500 BTUs of sensible capacity, 2,500 BTUs of latent capacity. I think that's pretty straightforward. Manual S, which is the ACA book that talks about equipment selection, gives us guidance and tells us if we manipulate our airflow, our sensible heat ratio changes. More air, as in greater than 400 CFM per ton, will give us a higher sensible heat ratio. It'll make the system more efficient. It'll give us more total BTUs, more sensible BTUs, but fewer latent BTUs. And it's going to lend itself to an average or a tight house that the house has a sensible heat ratio that's going to be north of 0.85 or around 0.9. Lower airflow is going to give us a piece of equipment that will do a better job at dehumidification. It's going to have less total BTUs. It would, in this window unit example, it would probably be around 95 or maybe 9,700 BTUs. Our sensible BTUs are going to drop. Our efficiency is going to drop. our latent capacity is going to increase. When I say lower airflow, that's going to be sub 400 CFM per ton. Some manufacturers publish their extended performance data as low as 350. That's going to be a good match on a house that has a sensible heat ratio less than 0.8. So, and as that last bullet point says, remember both the system and the house have a sensible heat ratio. So our sensible heat ratio is calculated by taking our total gain and dividing it into our sensible gain. And that gives us a goal, if you will, to what our I'm learning how to use these buttons again. It will give us a goal as to what our sensible heat ratio will be. So again, leaky house, lower sensible heat ratio, tighter house, higher sensible heat ratio. Oh, skip that. All right, so what's the difference between nominal and actual BTUs? If you don't know this, that's bad, right? Nominal, it's the 12,000 BTUs per ton, yada, yada, yada. If you look at the extended performance data of equipment, we're going to find actual BTUs are less than nominal in most instances, especially with unitary splits. There's a piece of extended performance data. The manufacturer publishes their stuff at 375, 400, and in the highlighted ones over there, 4.25 per nominal ton. The box below it is showing us our 75 degree indoor dry bulb design temperature with a corresponding 62 degree wet bulb, which ultimately is our target design conditions for a green grass climate, which would be 75 degrees of 50% relative humidity. And using 85 as our outdoor design temperature, it shows we have 23,400 BTUs of total capacity, 19,000 sensible, 4,400 of latent. And you'll see as we slow the fan down, total drops, sensible drops, latent increases. And this is lineal across all air conditioning systems. It's the physics of how air conditioning works. So I told you I would get to this 1.8 tons. There's our 21.6 is our actual gain. What size system? I've asked probably 1,000 people over the last 2 years this question, and I would say the majority of them say, well, if you recognize Richard. If you're a millennial, you probably don't. That would be Steve Harvey. But survey says 2 tons, right? Most common answer given. And, well, I'm going to show you how a 2-ton piece of equipment is going to cover a 1.8 ton gain. 22,400 BTUs is the total capacity of our 2-ton system. That system has a sensible heat ratio of 0.75. We're running it at your magical 400 CFM per ton. 16.8 is our sensible BTU capacity. The house has a sensible heat ratio of 0.85, means our gain is just a little over 19K. Obviously, 16.8 isn't as much as 19K, so right there, it's NFG, and I think you guys know what NFG stands for. So if we take our gain less our capacity, we'll see that we have a latent gain that's pretty small, around 2,500 BTUs. What didn't I include on the previous slide? Well, we had excess latent capacity. 5,600 BTUs of latent capacity to be precise. We could have taken that 22.4 and multiplied it by 0.25, or we could have taken our sensible capacity and deducted it from our total capacity, and we would have seen that we had 5,600 BTUs of latent capacity. Half of the excess latent capacity can be added to the sensible. System has 5,600 BTUs of latent capacity. So we deduct the 2,560, which is our latent gain. We have a little over 3,000 BTUs of excess. Half of that can be added to our sensible capacity. And even when we do that, we still see we're a couple of hundred, 500, 600 BTUs short. What does that equal? It equals the phone ringing on a 90-degree day in my market, because that's our design temperature, because we put a friggin' system in that was too small from the very beginning, because we didn't know what sensible heat ratio was, or we didn't know what math was, or we didn't know what manual S was. We see this over and over and over and over again. And I would say if you're exactly with me with what I'm talking about right now, you're the exception, not the rule. And if you don't know this stuff, well, maybe that's why you're watching this crap, to learn something. And if that's the case, good for you, right? Onward, upward, and all that crap. All right, 400 CFM per ton, it's beer can cold. If you cling to 400 CFM per ton, no matter how you slice it, it's just another rule of thumb, right? ACA Manual S will give us guidance. I'm not going to go through in great detail what Manual S really entails, but I'll tell you the S doesn't stand for secret. Huh? How's that? What Manual S really does tell us is if the house's sensible heat ratio is below 0.8, we want lower airflow, do more latent removal. If it's above 0.85, then we want something greater than 400 CFM per ton. Very rarely will the sensible heat ratio of a house come out between 0.8 and 0.85, and 400 CFM per ton is our actual recommended airflow. So if you're stuck on 400 CFM per ton, enlighten yourself. And I don't think I'm picking nits with this, right? My friend Jack Bartell says something about picking the fly crap out of the pepper. This ain't it. This is actually doing the minimum, right? Doing what you're supposed to as far as proper design. That you'll find in ACA Manual D. 500 square foot per ton is a myth. 400 CFM per ton is a myth. A 0.1 friction rate is a myth. High or low returns. I love talking about where returns go. I've gotten people in some pretty big venues to get up and actually wanting to duke it out, man. And if you want to look like an ass, argue about return placement, man. That's good times. So again, we're back at one of these extended performance data sheets. Again, this manufacturer publishes in 25 CFM increments as far as 400s in the middle, 375 per ton for their lower value, 4.25 for their higher. This next manufacturer, Train, they also do some publishing. All the manufacturers publish this stuff. They just do it a little bit different. But when they publish their stuff, it's 400 CFM per ton. Then the lower number is 350, and the higher number is 450. There's no right or wrong. It's just how the manufacturers happen to publish their extended performance data. And if you're really paying attention here, you're going to say, hey, Ed, how come on the last slide they asked me about my, or they showed my wet bulb temperature being 62, and now they're showing me 63. If you look on a digital psychrometric chart and plot 75 degrees and 50% relative humidity, it actually comes out around a 62.5 wet bulb. And some manufacturers round up and some round down. Heating speeds, as far as beer can, it's beer can cold. If you're not setting your fan speeds based off of some actual code guidance, you're making shit up. Right. And I think I'm going to stop here and see if I like the way this came out. And I'm going to throw this out to you guys and ask if you're interested in more of my way of doing this. We'll see. How's that? I'm hitting the stop.